We can hire 3 junior engineers for your salary, he smirked during my dismissal meeting. It's nothing personal. It's simply about cutting costs. My name is Victor Hale. I'm 55 years old, and I've been the lead systems engineer at Veltria Housing for 18 years. I created their entire infrastructure from the ground up, designed every expansion, and maintained operations so seamlessly that the executives overlooked how reliant the company was on me until they decided I was too expensive. I faced Graham Vickers, the new chief technology officer who had only been with the company for 6 months. He was 42, wore stylish glasses, and held an MBA from Cornell. He was hired to modernize the operations, which evidently meant letting go of the most seasoned staff first. The severance package is quite generous, Diane from Human Resources stated, pushing a folder across the table. It includes 2 months' salary, along with your accrued vacation time. I nodded, accepted the folder, and asked, "Is there anything else you want to add?" Graham appeared almost let down. Perhaps he anticipated me to dispute or threaten legal action. Give him something to report to the board about my difficult demeanor. What do you want me to say? Most individuals in your situation have questions or concerns, I replied with a shrug. It seems pretty clear-cut to me. Graham exchanged looks with Diane, who seemed just as confused by my composure. What they didn't realize was that I wasn't calm. I was simply finished. There's a distinction. We'd appreciate your assistance with the transition, Graham went on. The new engineering team will require some direction regarding the system architecture, maybe a consulting role for a few weeks. I'll think about it, I replied, fully aware that I wouldn't. We shook hands. I emptied my desk without protest. 18 years of work fit into one cardboard box. I nodded farewell to a few coworkers who looked away awkwardly, worried that they might be next. As I made my way to my truck in the parking garage, my phone vibrated. A text from Alan, the database administrator I had hired 12 years ago. "This is Vic. The whole team is in a panic." I chose not to reply. At home, I sat on my deck overlooking Lake Ontario, sipping a glass of bourbon, watching the sunset turn the water into copper. My wife, Elaine, placed her hand on my shoulder. "What will you do next?" I shrugged. "Something will come up." What Graham didn't know, what he hadn't taken the time to understand, was that I hadn't merely built their systems. I had custom-coded large sections myself with little documentation because the company had consistently refused to invest in a proper documentation team. Only I comprehended the intricate redundancies, the concealed security layers, and the complex network architecture, and I had no intention of explaining it to anyone. I started at Veltria Housing when it was still known as Bayview Properties, a small real estate management firm with 4 apartment complexes and a dozen employees. Their entire IT setup consisted of 2 desktop computers, a fax machine, and a dial-up internet connection. The owner, Harold Bay, recruited me from a consulting job in Syracuse. "We're expanding," he told me. "We need someone who can create something robust." Over 18 years, I transformed that basic setup into a comprehensive property management system that managed everything from tenant applications and background checks to automated maintenance requests and rent collection across 63 properties in 4 states. I built it incrementally, adapting, upgrading, and refining as the company expanded. When Harold retired 5 years ago, his son Justin sold the company to a private equity firm that rebranded it as Veltria Housing. They retained me, impressed by my accomplishments. However, circumstances began to shift. New leadership emerged, and immediate goals became prioritized over long-term sustainability. My initial warning signs appeared slowly. First, they dismissed my suggestion for a documentation team. Too costly, they claimed. "We'll address it next quarter." That quarter never materialized. Then they began to engage consultants, young MBAs who spoke about transforming property management and utilizing cloud technologies. They would listen to my explanations of our system design with blank expressions, then propose off-the-shelf solutions that wouldn't mesh with our custom setup. I continued to advocate for my position, clarifying why their methods were ineffective, showcasing the unique custom code that defined our system. Eventually, they excluded me from strategic meetings. Elaine picked up on it before I did. "They're sidelining you," she remarked one evening during dinner. "You need to get ready." I dismissed her concern. "They rely on me. No one else comprehends how the entire system functions cohesively." "That might be precisely the issue," she countered. 6 months ago, they appointed Graham as the new CTO. He transitioned from a banking software firm and promptly began discussing standardization and replacing legacy systems. He brought on 3 recent graduates as junior engineers. They shadowed me, posing questions about the system. I responded to their inquiries, yet I sensed they weren't fully grasping the intricacies. How could they? It had taken me years to develop those systems, to comprehend the interconnections, and to establish the redundancies that ensured everything operated seamlessly during crises. Last week, Graham visited my office. "Quick meeting tomorrow morning," he mentioned nonchalantly. "Just a quarterly check-in." I should have anticipated it. The first call arrived 2 weeks after my departure. I was at home updating my resume when my phone rang. "Graham Vickers." I let it go to voicemail. "Victor, it's Graham. We're encountering some issues with the tenant portal. The junior team is addressing it, but they're struggling with some of your code structure. Could you please return our call? It would just be a brief consultation." I erased the message and returned to my resume. 3 additional calls came in that day, each voicemail growing more urgent. By evening, Alan texted me. "The system has been down all day. Maintenance requests aren't going through. Graham's losing it." The following morning, Diane from HR called. "Victor, I hope you're doing well. I'm reaching out because we'd like to talk about a temporary consulting arrangement to assist with some current system challenges. The compensation would be quite generous." I answered my phone. "How generous?" $300 per hour, minimum 4-hour commitment." "I'll consider it and get back to you," I replied, then ended the call. I sat at my kitchen table, gazing out at the lake. Elaine set a cup of coffee in front of me. "What's on your mind?" "I'm realizing they're discovering exactly what I'm worth." Over the next 3 days, the calls escalated. Graham, Diane, even Justin Bayou, who was still on the board. The tenant portal was offline. The maintenance scheduling system was generating errors. The automatic payment processing had failed, impacting thousands of residents. I chose not to respond to any of them. On the 4th day, I received an email from Devlin Systems, a regional competitor to Veltria. They managed fewer properties but had been growing quickly. The email was from their Director of Technology, Lawrence Devlin himself. "Victor, I heard about your situation at Veltria. We've always admired your work from a distance. Would you be interested in discussing opportunities with us? We are aiming to enhance our complete property management framework." I responded and arranged a meeting for the next day. That night, while Elaine and I were getting dinner ready, my doorbell chimed. Graham Vickers was on my doorstep, his designer glasses slightly askew, his usually pristine suit creased. "Victor, I'm sorry for showing up without notice, but we're facing an urgent issue. The whole system is down. Nothing is functioning. The team is stumped about what the problem is or how to resolve it." I leaned against the doorframe. "That sounds quite serious." "It is. We require your assistance. The board has given me the authority to offer you a generous consulting rate. $500 an hour, whatever it takes." I recalled the cardboard box in my garage. 18 years of effort condensed into a few keepsakes. I thought about it being purely financial, just budget cuts. I considered the documentation team. They would never have approved this. "I'm sorry to hear about your difficulties," I replied softly. "However, I have an interview scheduled for tomorrow. Something will come through, just as I anticipated." I shut the door on his shocked expression and returned to preparing dinner. For the first time since my dismissal, a wave of tranquility washed over me. Not fulfillment, not retribution, merely clarity. I wasn't going to assist them in mending what they had damaged. The interview with Lawrence Devlin went better than I had hoped. We met at a cafe in downtown Rochester, away from both corporate offices. "I've admired your work for years," Lawrence remarked, stirring his coffee. "That integrated property management system you created at Veltria is renowned in our field. No one else has anything comparable." "Thank you," I replied. "It required time. That's what I want to discuss. Time. We aim to develop something similar, but we don't want to start from the ground up. We need someone who comprehends the architecture, the integration points, and the security layers. Someone who can construct something superior to what's available." "I'm intrigued." Lawrence beamed. "Excellent, because I'm ready to offer you the role of Chief Systems Architect. Full benefits, stock options, and a salary 20% higher than your previous one at Veltria." It was an attractive offer, almost too good. "Why me?" I inquired. "There are younger, less expensive engineers available." Lawrence chuckled. "You sound like your old employer." We tried that approach. Hired 3 bright young engineers from top universities. They created something sleek and modern that crashes whenever we exceed 100 simultaneous users. We don't need cheap, we need dependable. I accepted the offer the following day. In the meantime, Veltria's issues were worsening. Alan kept me informed with sporadic texts. The system had been partially restored, but essential functions were still malfunctioning. They had engaged a costly consulting firm that specialized in recovering legacy systems. A week after I began at Dellon, Graham called once more. "Victor, please, this is becoming serious. We've lost access to payment records for the last 3 months. Tenants are complaining about incorrect charges. The consulting team claims they require your input on the database structure." I was tempted to disregard it, but something compelled me to answer. "Graham, I'm employed elsewhere now, exclusive contract. I regret to say I can't assist you. We'll double whatever they're compensating you for just 2 days of your time. It's not about the money." "Then what is it about? Revenge? Are you relishing watching us struggle?" I hesitated, weighing my response carefully. "No, Graham, I'm not enjoying it. But you made a business choice. You determined my experience wasn't worth the expense. Now you're starting to understand what that truly entails. The board is interested in discussing your return. Full salary along with a signing bonus." For a brief moment, I experienced a rush of satisfaction, but it quickly dissipated. Returning wouldn't resolve anything. The same executives who deemed me surplus would be poised for another chance to reduce expenses. "I appreciate the proposal, but I've committed myself to Devlin Systems." Graham's tone turned stern. "You know, there might be legal consequences if we find that you deliberately made our systems hard to manage. Non-compete agreements, concerns regarding intellectual property." There it was, the threat I had anticipated. The system remains unchanged from when the company consistently turned down my requests for a documentation team. I responded calmly. "Every line of code is owned by Veltria as outlined in my employment agreement. I've taken nothing with me apart from my knowledge, but feel free to have your attorneys reach out to mine." I ended the call, my hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the anger I had suppressed until this moment. The implication that I had sabotaged them was the ultimate affront. At Devlin, I was starting anew, constructing systems correctly from the ground up with complete documentation, training programs for the engineering team, and safeguards to avert the kind of disaster I had faced. I wasn't going to dwell on the past anymore, but I also wouldn't assist them. Some lessons had to be learned through hardship. A month after starting at Devlin Systems, I had an unexpected visitor in my new office. Alan, my previous database administrator, stood uncomfortably in the doorway with a laptop bag. "Do you have time for lunch?" he inquired. "Over sandwiches at a local deli?" Alan updated me on the turmoil at Veltria. "It's worse than you realize," he said, lowering his voice despite the bustling lunchtime crowd. "They've lost access to historical data going back 3 years. The backup systems are somehow corrupted. The consulting firm is suggesting they may need to start from scratch." I wasn't shocked. The backup system had numerous redundancies and security measures that had to be meticulously followed. Skip one step and the entire operation would collapse in a way meant to safeguard tenant data from unauthorized access. "That's not all," Alan continued. "I discovered something while assisting the consultants with the payment processing system. Graham had been planning your dismissal for months. He had been meeting with the board, persuading them that your custom infrastructure was too costly to maintain." "How do you know this?" Alan pulled out his laptop and showed me a series of emails he found in the system archives. Emails exchanged between Graham and the board discussing the legacy staff reduction plan, specifically naming me as the primary target. He told them they could replace you with less expensive engineers and switch to off-the-shelf solutions within 6 months, Alan explained. He projected annual cost savings of over $1 million. I scanned the emails, feeling a peculiar detachment. One line from Graham caught my attention. "Hale's custom systems are unnecessarily complicated. He has made himself essential by design, not out of necessity." There's more. Alan said the private equity firm that owns Veltria is preparing to sell. They've been getting ready for this for more than a year. Graham was brought in specifically to cut costs and enhance the company's profitability before the sale. Now it all clicked into place. The push for standardization, the reluctance to create proper documentation, the sudden emphasis on reducing senior staff expenses. It wasn't about bettering the company. It was about preparing it for a swift turnaround. "Why are you showing this to me?" I inquired. Alan shut his laptop. "Because I resigned yesterday, and I'm not alone in this. Half of the IT team has departed. The consultants estimate it will take at least 6 months to regain full functionality, possibly longer." He paused. And because Veltria's top client, Westbrook Properties, is thinking about leaving, they have lost trust in the management system. I contemplated the consequences. Westbrook accounted for nearly 30% of Veltria's income. Losing them would be catastrophic, especially with a sale in progress. "What are your plans now?" I asked. Alan smiled. "Actually, I was hoping Devlin might be looking for database administrators." Later that day, I discussed bringing Alan onto the team with Lawrence. He agreed right away. We were constructing a team piece by piece with individuals who understood the importance of creating sustainable systems. That evening, I received another call from Graham. This time, his tone lacked its usual authority. "Victor, please. The situation is urgent. Westbrook is threatening to cancel their contract. The board is questioning my choices. We need your assistance." "I'm sorry, Graham. I can't assist you. Name your price. Anything. It's not about the cost. It's about valuing experience and the effort involved in building something correctly from the start." The line went quiet for a moment. "You anticipated this would happen," he finally said. "You knew precisely what would fail and when." "No, Graham. I only understood what I'd created and the effort required to sustain it. Information I tried to convey multiple times." I ended the call feeling neither victorious nor regretful, just the quiet understanding that some lessons can only be learned through failure. The opportunity arose sooner than I anticipated. 2 months into my position at Devlin Systems, Lawrence summoned me to his office. "I just got off the line with Jeffrey Westbrook," he said, referring to the CEO of Westbrook Properties. "They are officially ending their contract with Veltria next month. They want to know if we can manage their portfolio." Westbrook Properties oversaw more than 10,000 units in the Northeast. This would more than double Devlin's current operations. "We're not equipped for that scale," I conceded. "The new system is progressing, but it's only halfway complete." Lawrence leaned in. "What would it require to prepare if we had to?" I considered it. 3 additional senior engineers, dedicated server infrastructure, and at least 8 weeks of development time. Even then, it would be tight. Jeffrey's in a tough spot. Veltria's shortcomings are damaging their reputation with tenants. He's willing to give us 12 weeks and finance the infrastructure expansion. This was the moment, the pivotal point. If Devlin took on Westbrook and succeeded, it would position us as a significant player in the market. If we failed, it could jeopardize both companies. "Let me contemplate the architecture," I said. "I'll provide a plan by tomorrow." That night, I hardly slept. I drafted system diagrams, outlined data migration paths, and assessed scaling obstacles. By morning, I had a plan, ambitious yet feasible, a hybrid strategy that would allow us to onboard Westbrook's properties in phases, reducing disruption. When I presented it to Lawrence, he examined it thoroughly. "This is solid," he remarked at last. "However, I see you've included a significant documentation phase that adds 3 weeks to the timeline." "It's non-negotiable," I responded. That's where Veltria stumbled. We document everything from the outset. We train the team on each component. No single points of failure. Lawrence nodded. "I'll trust your judgment. Let's proceed." The upcoming weeks proved to be quite demanding. We brought on 5 additional engineers, 2 of whom had recently departed from Veltria. Alan developed a tool for database migration that could convert Veltria's data format into our new framework. I crafted a modular design that could adapt to Westbrook's evolving requirements. Midway through the project, I got an email from Justin Bayou, the son of the former owner who remained on Veltria's board. "Victor, I want to express my regret regarding how everything concluded. The board was misinformed about the consequences of your departure. Graham has been dismissed as CTO. We're facing challenges in recovery, and Westbrook's exit will significantly impact us. If you ever consider returning, the opportunity is available." I chose not to reply. 10 weeks into our 12-week schedule, we were prepared for a phased rollout. The smallest region of Westbrook, consisting of 2,000 units in western New York, would be the first to migrate. If it went well, the other regions would follow suit. The day prior to the migration, Lawrence summoned me to his office once more. A familiar figure was present. It was Jeffrey Westbrook himself. "So, you're the architect of the system?" Jeffrey inquired, rising to shake my hand. "Lawrence has shared a lot about you." "All positive, I trust," Jeffrey grinned. "He mentioned you've created a solution that won't fail every time we add a new property, something that will expand with us." "That's the goal. I also hear you previously worked at Veltria." I nodded, uncertain of his direction. "They are in a tough spot, you know. The private equity firm is attempting to sell, But with Westbrook departing and their systems still not fully operational, they aren't attracting many potential buyers. He took a breath. Except for one. Who is that? I asked, although I had an inkling of the response. Devlin Systems, Lawrence stated. They're contemplating making an offer at a significant discount compared to their valuation 6 months ago. I glanced between them, absorbing the ramifications. If that occurs, Jeffrey continued, we would need someone who comprehends both companies to oversee the integration. Someone capable of preserving the valuable aspects of Veltria's infrastructure while transitioning everything to your new design. Are you inquiring if I'd be open to working on that? I sought clarification. Lawrence nodded. Only if the acquisition takes place and only if you're agreeable to it. I reflected on the irony. The system I had constructed, the individuals I had trained, the company that had let me go, all potentially returning under my leadership. I would be open to it, I finally stated. However, I have one stipulation. We do it correctly. Complete documentation, adequate training, no shortcuts. Agreed, Lawrence replied. We've learned that lesson. As I made my way back to my office, I felt neither vindication nor a thirst for revenge, just the straightforward satisfaction of knowing that quality work done properly ultimately speaks for itself. 6 months later, I found myself in the lobby of what had once been Veltria Housing's headquarters. The sign now read Delin Integrated Property Management. The acquisition had been finalized for less than a quarter of what the company had been valued at prior to my exit. Lawrence and I walked through the office, greeting former Veltria staff who would remain during the transition. Some averted their gaze awkwardly. Others beamed with relief. A few, those who had collaborated closely with me over the years, nodded with quiet understanding. Graham was gone, along with most of the executive team that had sanctioned my dismissal. Justin Bayou had remained on as a consultant, assisting with the transition for legacy clients. Upon reaching the server room, my former domain, I paused. Through the window, I could observe the equipment I'd specified, the flashing indicators of systems I had created. Do you want to go inside? Lawrence inquired. Not necessary, I answered. We'll be transitioning everything to the new framework anyway. In the primary conference room, the remaining Veltria team had assembled for the announcement. Lawrence presented me as the Chief Integration Officer tasked with managing the technical transition. Many of you are already acquainted with Victor, he mentioned. He developed the original systems that operated this company for nearly 20 years. Now he will lead us in merging both companies' technologies into something superior to what either had previously. As I surveyed the audience, some faces familiar and others new, I felt neither triumph nor a need to say, I told you so. What purpose would that serve? Instead, I briefly outlined the transition strategy, the timeline, and the support that would be accessible to everyone throughout the process. I stressed that no one would be abandoned due to budget cuts. The irony was evident to everyone present. 1 year post-acquisition, Devlin Integrated Property Management had emerged as the largest property management firm in the Northeast. The migration was finalized, with all properties now operating on the new system I had developed, thoroughly documented, adequately staffed, and running efficiently. On a brisk autumn morning, I drove to the office for a concluding meeting with Lawrence. The leaves along Lake Ontario had transformed into vibrant hues of red and gold, a perfect backdrop for the end of this chapter. The board has approved your proposal, Lawrence said as soon as I took my seat. The Technical Education Division will kick off next quarter. You will have complete freedom to create the curriculum and recruit instructors. This was my condition for remaining after the integration was finalized. Not a higher position or increased pay, but the establishment of a division focused on training the next generation of systems engineers and architects, teaching them not just how to code, but how to create enduring solutions. Thank you. I expressed that it meant a great deal. No, thank you, Lawrence responded. What you've accomplished here is extraordinary. Not only the technology, but the culture surrounding it, the documentation, the knowledge sharing, and the priority on quality over quick fixes. Later that day, I cleared out my integration office. Unlike my rushed departure from Veltria, this was a deliberate transition to my new position. As I gathered my belongings, Justin Bayview knocked on the door. Do you have a moment? He asked. We strolled to the small courtyard outside the building. My father asked about you, he mentioned. He's now retired in Florida, but he still keeps up with company news. He was pleased to learn you were back in some capacity. How is Harold? I inquired. Doing well, fishing a lot. Justin replied. He paused. He often said that letting you go would be the biggest mistake this company could make. It seems he was correct. I nodded, uncertain of how to respond. I learned something valuable from all this. Justin continued. Value isn't always apparent until it's missing. As I drove home along the lakeshore, I reflected on value, experience, the care taken, the importance of doing things correctly the first time, about systems designed to endure, and the people who create them. I hadn't sought vengeance. I hadn't felt the need to. I had simply advanced, creating something better, something that would endure beyond any individual choice or short-term mindset. Sometimes, the most effective